Welcome back to CivilNet. I'm your host, Patrick Elliott. I'm actually honored to be joined today by the new Canadian ambassador to Armenia, Mr. Andrew Turner. Mr. Ambassador, thank you for hopping on.
Oh, thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here.
Happy to have you, a fellow Canadian exploring Armenia. I'm going to come out swinging right out the gate, and I want to talk about Canada's response to the ongoing siege of Nagorno-Karabakh over 9 months and the essential ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh, so the siege that culminated in the ethnic cleansing. As a Canadian citizen, I mean, I have to say I'm extremely disappointed. We've always prided ourselves as being a humanitarian superpower. And throughout this whole time, Canada's been missing in action. As the new ambassador, what's your take on this situation, and what do you hope to do now in your new role?
No, well, thank you. Well, I think one of the primary purposes behind the decision of opening the embassy was to allow Canada to have this permanent presence on the ground, to be more engaged, to be able to be more active on a permanent basis. I think our team at the embassy in Moscow that was covering our relations did a fantastic job, but they were only able to visit periodically, and of course we had the period during the pandemic in which travel was completely impossible. So the benefit of having us here on the ground allows us to engage in a much more thorough and consistent way. And we are therefore looking to find as many avenues as possible to do more to engage with and show our support for Armenia. And I think that was made clear during Minister Joly's visit in October for the official opening of the embassy, in which the priority was given not merely to opening the embassy, but also to engaging directly with the refugees from Nagorno-Karabakh to hear their stories firsthand, to understand the situation and the challenges they face. And the minister felt it was also very important to go to the region of Jermuk to engage with the EU observer mission, that Canada is the first country to be a third-party contributor that has been approved. And we're hoping that this will set the stage for more countries to join. But it was an opportunity for the minister to send that signal of our support for Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. I think Canada and the rest of the international community did what we could to engage. We highlighted the issue with Azerbaijan throughout the course of the Lachen corridor. The Lachen corridor blockade. There were several statements issued. There were direct engagements to convey the need to open the corridor immediately. Unfortunately, this was not done, and Azerbaijan chose to pursue military action. I think that it is obviously a tragedy that people had to suffer for that extended period of time and then to be forcibly displaced from their homes. So that is one of the reasons why, in addition to the signals of political support, the minister announced additional humanitarian assistance during her visit to help with the refugees.
I understand the carrot, but where's the stick? That's what I would like to know. Why hasn't Canada personally sanctioned Azerbaijan? Canada has shown overwhelming support to Ukraine in its time of need, and this was even predating this government, right? The government of Prime Minister Harper was very vocally pro-Ukraine, and essentially because Canada recognizes its role as the defender of democratic states in an increasingly authoritarian world. So we're somewhat disappointed that the hammer hasn't come down on Azerbaijan the same way that Canada's stepping up facing Russia. You're talking about a completely authoritarian state, essentially bullying and chewing away at a democratic, yes, a burgeoning democracy, but a democratic state nonetheless.
No, indeed, and I think that Minister Joly and the government have been very clear that all options remain on the table, including the specific question of sanctions. I think what we are looking at right now, though, is seeing the efforts that the government of Armenia has taken to engage in the peace process with Azerbaijan. Again, whether it's through the discussions that the EU have engaged with, or with the US, or now most recently the bilateral discussions and the statement on the agreement with regards to the prisoner exchange. So we are, again, as I said, literally the sentence that Minister Joly said is all options remain on the table, but what we are focus on right now is allowing the Armenian government to pursue its peace efforts, and that will hopefully bring about a peace agreement and a positive result. If it doesn't, then, as I said, all options remain on the table.
Well put. Let's pivot a little bit, because part of this peace agreement, at least from the Armenian side, is the opening and unblocking of regional transport and communication. So the Turkish border has been closed since the 90s with Armenia, and there's hopes that the border can open in the near future. What's Canada's role in this? Is there any kind of encouragement going on as both a partner and a NATO ally to Turkey? Is there any pressure from the Canadian side to push the Turkish authorities to open up communications?
Oh, absolutely. I think we view it not just as a positive from the perspective of NATO allies, but also from our direct experience in Canada's work with the US and later with Mexico in free trade, and then ultimately the North American Free Trade Agreement. Just logical benefits that are so obvious that come from regional economic cooperation. And so for a country like Armenia, I think the initiative that's been put forward with regards to the Crossroads of Peace is a very sensible approach, not purely because it will benefit Armenia, but also because it would bring about significant benefits to Turkey, to Azerbaijan, to the entire South Caucasus region. And that economic benefit that would come to all of those countries would then likewise help strengthen Armenia's democracy. It would strengthen the region's resilience and reduce its vulnerability to some of the negative influence that we have seen from countries like Russia at times. So we actively engage with Turkey, we actively engage with Azerbaijan, not just on the basics of the peace process, but that idea of, yes, going beyond into broader regional economic cooperation, because we see tremendous advantages. And that, of course, would only make the entire region more appealing for international investment, including from more Canadian companies.
Yeah, that makes sense. Emotionally, I'm uncomfortable with it, but logically I understand that eventually we're going to have to trade with our neighbors, and nations who trade together at least have less chance of killing each other.
No, well, this is these are big and very understandably, as you say, emotional questions. But again, the debates we had in Canada in the 1980s over free trade with the U.S. Again, and I can see very much the parallel to Armenia. Canada, a much smaller country compared to the much larger neighbor.
The Americans weren't trying to absorb and exterminate Canada. That's kind of I said the Americans and the Mexicans weren't working in tandem to absorb and exterminate Canada. That's the main component for us.
No, but not at that time. But if you go back through history, there were extended periods of military conflict, territorial annexation,
Canada burned the White House.
And likewise, and likewise, you see the same parallels with the development of the European Union. The process of making peace is always going to be difficult and complicated, but it is, again, the only viable alternative to pursue peace and economic cooperation in the region is a perpetual conflict, and that is not, that is not a recipe for progress, for success, for development. All it leads to is heightened tensions. It discourages international investment and makes everyone poorer, which is why it is in everyone's benefit to look and make all efforts to reach a peace agreement.
You mentioned in your just one question previously, you specifically mentioned Russia as a nefarious actor in the region. Now, objectively, that's beyond debate at this point. But the idea is to strengthen integration between Turkey, Azerbaijan, and Armenia. Again, for us, we see Turkey and Azerbaijan as nefarious actors in the region. Canada being a country that recognized the Armenian genocide, you had Erdogan fly to Baku for the victory parade after they ethnically cleansed and committed horrible war crimes against parts of Nagorno-Karabakh after 2020. Bringing up memories of Enver Pasha, which is, it's as if you had the Chancellor of Germany going to Warsaw and then evoking Heinrich Himmler's speeches and stuff. So you still have this kind of provocative behavior on behalf of Turkey and Azerbaijan. And Canada, having been, as I said, a country that recognizes the Armenian genocide, at the Liberal Party level, reversed a ban on selling equipment, Canadian-produced equipment, in my name as a Canadian taxpayer, former Canadian taxpayer, to Turkey, components that were used in their Bayraktar drones that were eventually used against Armenian citizens and civilians in Karabakh, and potentially against Canadians, right? There were, as far as I know, there were 3 Canadian citizens who were living in Karabakh, so against Canadian citizens, effectively. How can we trust Canada's role as an impartial or even someone who has goodwill towards us at this point?
Well, I think the ties between Canada and Armenia are very long-standing and very significant. Again, perhaps most importantly through the extensive diaspora community that has made and continues to make major positive contributions to all facets of Canadian life, from business to academia to politics. And then you add on to that, as you say, the fact that yes, Canada has recognized the Armenian genocide. We were one of before many other countries have done so. Indeed, one of the things that I had the privilege of doing before I joined our diplomatic service was I did spend some time working in the Canadian Parliament and did research and drafted the speech for one of the senators who spoke in favor of the motion to recognize the Armenian genocide. So for me personally, it is a very it's an issue that I have long been engaged with. And of course, I think since 2018 and the focus that Armenia has chosen on democracy, that has dramatically increased Canada's ability to engage. And we have, again, I think the very positive rapport that was established during the Summit of the Francophonie between our leaders, between then Minister for the Francophonie, Mélanie Joly, now our Foreign Minister, and that has increased the desire for Canada to be able to do more to engage with Armenia. So I don't think, and obviously we've continued on that, but with regard, so the discussion about the use of the drone technology in 2020 was in no way intended to be used against Armenia. Again, Canada has specific policies and processes with regards to export controls, and Turkey, as a NATO ally, is a trusted and valued partner. They have done incredibly important work in terms of strengthening the NATO alliance. They have been of tremendous assistance to Canada in many areas, including assistance with consular support in response to major disasters, just as we in turn have helped in response, for example, to the earthquake. So what was done was that Turkey had made a request for these exports to be granted. The assessment was that the purpose that they were using, which was to help prevent a humanitarian catastrophe from an Assad regime military offensive in parts of Syria, was an important objective. But unfortunately, what has happened is that the end-use assurances were violated, and they were used in a different purpose by providing them to Azerbaijan and then being used in the Nagorno-Karabakh war in 2020.
Bombing Kurdish weddings.
In terms of the 2020 conflict, the minister, as soon as this was, the allegations came forward, the permits were suspended. A full investigation was launched. It concluded, unfortunately, that Turkey had violated these end-use assurances, and that prompted Canada to adopt not just canceling those specific permits, but to adopt a blanket policy of presumptive denial for the export of military goods to Turkey until such time as the degree of confidence in those assurances that those assurances would be respected, could be reestablished. So we have been engaged in ongoing discussions with Ankara on that, but it is, again, it was not a policy that Canada had taken in any way against Armenia. It was a decision that was taken in a completely different context, and which then Turkey, in violation of the end-use assurances that were provided, chose to act in, chose to use them for that purpose.
is there the possibility for Canada at least to even the score and to start selling these kinds of components to Armenia, for example, for domestic use?
So again, there is always the possibility of looking at things. As I said, all options are on the table.
Okay.
The Canadian defense industry is not as developed as some of our American or European counterparts, but there are certainly important components of things that, again, so not necessarily drones, but sensors for the drones and other things that Canada does provide. I think what we have also been looking at in the context of the increasing ties with Armenia has been ways that we can look to cooperate in a variety of fields, including in military and security. So there have been discussions about trying to expand the participation of Armenian military officers in some of the military training cooperation programs that Canada has run, including having Armenians take part in things like the Halifax International Security Forum. So there are a variety of mechanisms by which we are looking at. And again, if there are commercial opportunities that could be pursued for be it the drone cameras or other military things, those can certainly be looked at. Obviously, one of the issues is that we do have specific legislation in place about the use of technology in areas of conflict. And so yet again, this is another reason why progress towards regional peace would make cooperation in that particular area much easier.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to host you.
No, it's a great pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here. It's still very early in my tenure, but I'm looking forward to continuing, and hopefully there'll be a chance for further discussions in the future.
Well, welcome to Armenia.
Thank you very much.
Thanks again for watching. This has been Pat from CivilNet, and we'll catch you in the new year.